This is fascinating. Antonio Pierce, who was the head coach, the interim head coach last season for the Las Vegas Raiders, had a very interesting comment. This is a clip of him talking about potentially the Raiders finding the recipe to defeat the Kansas City Chiefs. Take a listen.
Who's last time to beat the Chiefs? Come on, man. These dudes, you know what I mean? Like, they did that.
Yeah.
So it's okay. It's cool. Like I told them, like, we're running back. We'll see them again. They got to see us. We got to see them. We already given the recipe of how to do it. You got the Jordan rules, and I'm calling now from now on, as long as I'm here, the Patrick Mahomes rules. So you remember when Jordan was going through it with the Pistons, all those guys in the 80s before he came Michael Jordan, Air Jordan, the Pistons used to whoop his. Anytime he came to the hole, elbows, filling them, love taps. We touched them. We in the head, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I'm touching you. So I showed those guys Jordan getting his whooped.
So he thinks he could replicate the bad boy Pistons Jordan rules against Patrick Mahomes, which he sort of did the last time they played, which he mentioned, where was it 2 defensive touchdowns in like 10 seconds or something like that. So I know heading into the season against the back-to-back reigning champions, do you think Pierce's Mahomes rules will work against these Kansas City Chiefs?
I personally think that was a dumb thing for him to say. Right? I mean, remember back here, some of the other players that got in trouble and coaches got in terrible trouble. Remember 2012 Bountygate rules, right? That was when Greg Williams of the New Orleans Saints put bounties out on players, right? And he wound up getting suspended for that. And that was against Frank Gore in an important game. He put a bounty out on Frank Gore. And that was terrible. And then Gerard Warren, again, back when Roethlisberger was just getting going, he said, kill the head and the body will fall, talking about Roethlisberger.
Jeez.
Huh? Kill the head and the body will fall. I mean, that's ridiculous. So you can't say those kinds of things. You got in trouble with the league for saying that. So I think that these kinds of things, saying you're going to target a player and elbow him or hit him hard or, do things that unsportsmanlike. I think that that's a bad idea for a head coach to say. I think he said, we got to knock the head off the snake. That's
metaphorical.
That's ridiculous, And then I think that, they'll be watching them. I mean, why would he say that? The Raiders did beat the Chiefs.
Once,
right?
yeah.
Once this year. So they ought to be happy with that and look at how they did it and try to replicate that rather than coming out with Mahomes rules. And now the refs are going to be watching, and anything that looks a little beyond the normal contact, they're going to get penalized for it. He hurt his team.
Well, I'll say this. We saw
ridiculous.
We saw a team already take cheap shots at the Chiefs, and it was in the Ravens playoff game against the Chiefs. Kyle Van Noy had a cheap shot. Travis Kelce got into it with somebody, and the Ravens got flagged for it. So, I don't think that he's going to go out and have bounty gate or, get bonuses for injuring players. What I do think is that it's not going to work. It's going to get penalized. If you cheap shot Mahomes, the refs are always eyeing the Chiefs anyway. We saw how they were somehow the most penalized team offensively, and then all of a sudden in the Super Bowl, they had the most holding penalties in the entire NFL last season. In the Super Bowl, no holding penalties, not a single one. I think that's for a couple Super Bowls now. So they already get sometimes when we saw a number of plays. Nick Bosa got held a lot, but against the Chiefs, we saw the Ravens take a couple of cheap shots, and not even Mahomes, but just players. Now, if it's strictly physicality, we're going to try to outbody the Chiefs' offensive line and make Mahomes under pressure and, hit him hard. That's one thing. If you're saying that you're going to, intentionally rough him up like the Pistons did with Jordan, every time he got into the paint, there was an elbow coming his way, that's something entirely different. And we already know Andy Reid and Matt Nagy, if he's still the OC moving forward, and Mahomes is going to be like, watch for the late hits. Because we saw Kyle Shanahan mention how Trent Williams, there was a holding call on a massive gain by George Kittle, and he said, call it fairly. The Chiefs have been doing that all game. So Kyle Shanahan tried to point out to the refs that, this is going on. Try to call it fairly. Mahomes and Andy Reid are going to do the exact same thing. It's like, hey, we saw what Antonio Pierce had to say about, they're creating, rules against me. They're going to try to, hit me late, try to rough me up. Pay attention to that. See if I can get a roughing the passer call. And already in an atmosphere where roughing the passer is such an ambiguous call now. You don't know what's roughing and what's not. Sometimes something is egregious, and sometimes it's called, sometimes it's not. We saw Brady in the 2018 AFC Championship game get smacked in the face. Wasn't even that hard of a hit. It was a roughing the passer call in favor of the Patriots. We see a couple times where quarterbacks get absolutely killed. No penalty. So if you're going to say that you're going to go out and become the bad boy, as the lower third says, the bad boy Raiders, you got to be careful. And in this era of the NFL, defenses are already penalized for playing too physically. So why are you going out and say, you know what? Let's take it up a notch. Let's go cheap shot route.
And
now.
even if they don't, they're going to get some penalties just because they talked about it. I think calling it out and saying this is something we're going to try to do, the Mahomes rules, it'll just ensure that they get some penalties whether they deserve them or not. Yeah. I think it was a stupid thing to do. I think it was really poor for a head coach to say something like that, particularly when they beat Mahomes once last year.
Right.
One of the few teams that did beat him. So I think that was a mistake on his part. I don't know why he said it, and I don't know. It was kind of an odd thing, I think.
I'll also say this. If you're creating a Mahomes rule, I'll say this. Mahomes against AFC West has literally the best division record since the merger. He's 30-5 against the AFC West. He has over 300 total yards per game. Touchdown interception ratio, 74-21. He has a 102 passer rating. He eats up the AFC West. Yeah. So maybe if you were the Bills, maybe if you were the Bengals, this would make a little bit more sense. In the AFC West, we're already, there's going to be maybe more competitive competition with the the Chargers getting a competent head coach in Jim Harbaugh. Who knows what Sean Payton's going to do at that, with that situation with Russell Wilson or not.
I don't see.
And then the Chiefs are just going back-to-back going for a three-peat.
Yeah.
And he already beats the crap out of your team. And guess what? If you try to do the Mahomes rule at your own stadium, he's undefeated at your stadium. So how the hell are you going to do that? He eats you alive when he's in your stadium.
Yeah. So I heard you say something that I have a question about.
Sure.
You said the Chiefs were called for a lot of holding penalties throughout the year and in the playoffs, but there was zero in the Super Bowl. Are you saying that maybe the refs were looking the other way, or maybe the Chiefs knew that they couldn't be penalized and they had to play a perfect game in order to win, and they actually didn't hold? Well, where do you come down on that? I want to know.
Well, you could look at some of the clips of several missed holding calls in favor of the Chiefs. A lot of times, Jawan Taylor, or even Donovan Smith, Nick Bosa got held a couple times. There were some holding calls that were, obviously missed. But in the grand scheme of things, I do appreciate it where it was less of a ref game and more of a regardless of missed calls or not, missed calls, bad calls, whatever the case may be. I don't think there was really any bad calls in the Super Bowl, but I do think I appreciate the refs keeping them out of it, even though they probably should have been in it a little more, just with the amount of, Nick Bosa got held a bunch in this game. I'm not going to, say that it's a rigged game or whatever, because I don't believe that. It is sports entertainment. The second half, Mahomes just outplayed the 49ers. There was no, ifs, ands, or buts about it. Mahomes, crucial scrambles, big-time completions. 49ers look dazed. Chris Jones up the middle on a 3rd and 4 in overtime. That's not the refs. That's just them that's the 49ers not playing up to the standard of a Super Bowl winner.
The 49ers didn't even block Chris Jones on that play.
Right.
He ran right up there. Not even, it was hardly even
Number
touched.
68 was going to block the guy who George Kittle was going to release off of and didn't even bother checking for Chris Jones, which once again, I'm not blaming Purdy here. There were 3 options open if number 68, the right guard, did block Chris Jones for even a half second. George Kittle released. You had C-Mac on the left side and Brandon Ayuk over the top. His defender fell down for a touchdown. So there were 3 open options, 2 that could have been touchdowns, 1 that would have been a first down. But you know what? Chris Jones, game changer. Now he'll probably make a massive amount of money if the Chiefs want to pay him. He might hit free agency. Who knows? But I do know.
I don't think he's going to make it to free agency.
I think the Chiefs, he definitely
deserves
a big payday.
not to sign him. He's a leadership guy. He's a really great leadership guy too.
Right.
Not only a great talent, but a great leader.
Yeah. So I would say, the Chiefs, L'Jarius Sneed, phenomenal player. Trent McDuffie you already have there, and their entire defensive lineup is really young, and which means really cheap. So I would say receiver, maybe. Mike Evans, it looks like he might hit free agency. You might want to sign him. I'd say Chris Jones, though, if I'm the Kansas City Chiefs, Chris Jones should be a number one priority.
Now, do you think that the league will say something to Antonio Pierce about his comments?
I think they're going to definitely... There's now a spotlight on hits that Max Crosby or anyone on the defensive side. There might be a spotlight on the Raiders now if he's coming out with these, trying to mimic the bad boy Pistons. Now, it could just be a statement of, we're going to be super physical against the Chiefs. That very well could be it.
But when the Jordan rules came out, though,
right?
When they were playing against Jordan, nobody knew about the Jordan rules.
Right.
It was after it was retired and all that they came out in books that they talked about that and in documentaries and things. So it wasn't something the Pistons made public.
They just did it.
They just did it. Right. They knew they were going to do it, and they had a plan for it, but they weren't telling anybody about it. That happened. We found out about that long after the bad boys were cooked, right?
Right. So I do think there is now a massive spotlight on a official first-time head coach in Antonio Pierce. I know it was the interim, but this is the first time he has the job. He has solidified the job.
It's off to a slow start as the permanent head coach saying something like that.
I think it does put an unnecessary spotlight, by the way, and I'm going to make this blatantly obvious. Your defense might play physically. You don't have a quarterback. Aiden O'Connell is not going to bring you to any promised land. He didn't complete a pass until the fourth quarter. For 3 straight quarters, you didn't throw the ball. The only reason you were up was because your defense had 2 touchdowns within a matter of like 10
against
seconds.
Mahomes.
Against Patrick. Well, one was a bad fumble. The other one, I believe, Jack Jones had a beautiful play. I believe he's the one who got the interception. He made a tremendous play, but yeah, no, your defense gave up 2 touchdowns, or your defense scored 2 touchdowns in a matter of 10 seconds, and your offense didn't complete a pass until like the fourth quarter. So you're going to go up against Mahomes again? I think just with the fact that the Chiefs are playing for something now, they're going for the first 3-peat in NFL history. The fact that they're playing for something, I think, just raises the stakes for how well they're going to play. Besides, the past 2 years were the years you wanted to beat the Chiefs. With Travis Kelce aging during the regular, he looked so broken after week 11. I mean, it looked really, really bad for him. But then last season, without Tyreek Hill, you had the defense was super young. The past 2 years were the years to beat the Chiefs. They won the Super Bowl both times. Now you're going to go up and try to play, the
heart of a champion. The heart of a champion, Nate.
Yeah, you're going to go try to play bully ball. I don't think
particularly this year. I mean, they really showed it.
I think this is not a great look. This could be a way to rally your men. Say, let's do this. We're going to go out and we're going to be the bad boy Pistons of the NFL. Good for you. But I guarantee you, there's an unnecessary spotlight.
You wind up with a lot of penalties you probably wouldn't have had called on you. Let's say that. I think that's what's going to happen.
I just think it's an unnecessary spotlight for a team that didn't do well.
They're going to get a lot of bad calls. They might not be the bad boys, but they'll get a bunch of bad calls against them.
There's going to be a spotlight there. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, if you want to check out the full episode, make sure you click the I in the top right-hand corner right now. If you want to listen to this show anywhere you go, make sure you go to anchor.fm/The Harvey Hour or anywhere you get your podcasts.